Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. You know, it's funny. Sometimes I just stop and think and I'm like, wait a minute, why is there anything at all?
Yeah,
It's really kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, why is there something rather than nothing?
it really is.
And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today with Leo Greenwood and his book, Believing Unity.
Ooh.
We're going to be looking specifically at chapter 1, where Greenwood tackles this question head on.
From what I've read, it's really interesting how he kind of dissects the question itself,
Right.
like breaks down the words to expose all the assumptions and complexities kind of hidden underneath.
What do you mean by breaking down the question?
Well, he takes something, for instance.
Okay.
He defines it as existence itself, everything we can perceive, experience, imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, there's nothing, which represents a complete absence of existence.
Okay.
But then he digs even deeper. He points out that the question itself implies a search for a reason, a purpose,
Oh, interesting.
even a comparison.
Okay, so it's not just about like figuring out why something exists, but also about understanding like how we even frame that question in the first place.
Exactly. And by doing that, Greenwood sets the stage for a much richer kind of exploration than just trying to search for a single definitive answer, right?
Right.
He wants us to really like grapple with the very nature of existence itself.
Yeah, it is a very mind-bending topic. So where does Greenwood go from there?
Well, he dives straight into the deep end,
Oh boy.
exploring the concept of nothingness. And this is where things get really interesting, because how can nothing be something that we even talk about, right?
It seems like a contradiction.
It is, it's a paradox.
Right.
Greenwood argues that the very act of us trying to conceptualize nothingness inevitably transforms it into a something.
Yeah. So the moment we try to grasp nothing, it kind of slips through our fingers and becomes something else. I think I'm following. Do you have an example to kind of make that more concrete?
Sure, imagine you're looking in a mirror. You see yourself, the room behind you, maybe some objects reflected back. But what you don't see is nothingness, right?
Right.
It's defined by its absence, yet that very absence creates a sort of presence in our minds.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. So the absence of nothingness actually makes us aware of it in a strange way.
Right.
So how does Greenwood use this kind of paradoxical idea of nothingness to answer the big question? Why is there something rather than nothing?
Well, he takes it a step further and argues that a state of true non-existence, where there's absolutely nothing, is inherently self-contradictory.
Okay.
Because such a state, couldn't have any properties of existence,
Hmm.
including time and space.
Well, hold on. You're saying that there couldn't even be time or space if there was truly nothing.
Exactly. Think about it. Nothing can't have any qualities, not even the quality of being empty,
Hmm.
because even emptiness is a kind of something.
Okay, my head is officially spinning. So how does Greenwood then connect this to the existence of, well, everything?
He uses this paradoxical nature of nothingness to conclude that existence must be eternal and infinite. It's a pretty mind-blowing concept when you really think about it.
It really is. And Greenwood doesn't stop there. He goes even further, suggesting that existence and non-existence may not be like true opposites after all.
Now, that's where it gets really interesting.
I'm really curious to hear more about that. Like, how does he even begin to unravel that concept?
Well, he starts by pointing out that non-existence is characterized by its absence, right?
Right.
But then he throws this curveball and asks, does that absence actually imply a kind of presence? What if existence and non-existence are actually happening simultaneously?
Okay.
What if every moment that existence is, non-existence is not, and vice versa?
That's a really,
It's a very profound concept to wrap your head around, that's for sure.
yeah.
And to help us grasp it, Greenwood encourages us to actually observe our surroundings.
Okay.
He points out that, everything we perceive, think, and experience, including our own awareness, exists in the context of non-existence not being there.
So basically, the fact that nothing isn't there is what allows something to be. Like, it's the foundation that reality is built on.
Exactly. Greenwood argues that this very realization reveals a profound presence, within that absence.
Wow.
Every breath we take, every experience we have is a manifestation of that eternal present.
That's beautiful. It's like he's saying both like existence and non-existence are essential parts of a greater whole. It's
Yes.
not one versus the other.
And because of this, he goes on to argue, Existence and non-existence can't be truly separated, right?
Okay.
They're inherently interconnected. They form a seamless continuum.
So instead of it being like two opposing forces, it's more like two sides of the same coin.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And he even challenges the idea of balance, which usually implies opposing forces.
Right.
In this case, he says there's no opposition. There's just this profound unity.
And so it's like he's dissolving that illusion of separation that we often impose on reality. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
all just being, as he calls it.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is no separation, then why do we experience the world as so divided?
Yeah.
Why do we see opposites everywhere?
That's a great question. And Greenwood addresses it head on. He suggests that this perceived opposition between existence and non-existence arises from a fabricated concept of non-existence as, a void.
Okay.
And this fabrication creates a false division in our minds.
So we're essentially creating this conflict in our minds, when in reality there is no separation.
That's the idea.
Hmm.
And Greenwood argues that this fundamental split between existing and not existing, if taken as real, leads to all sorts of other perceived divisions.
Like life and death, self and other, good and bad.
Precisely. And he suggests that cultures that embrace this dualistic, finite view of reality are ultimately bound to crumble, because the nature of the finite is that it can't endure indefinitely.
So to really understand reality, we need to transcend these artificial divisions and embrace the unity of being.
That's what Greenwood proposes.
Right.
And to highlight this unity, he suggests using the term being to encompass both existence and non-existence,
Right.
without the need for a conceptual divide.
So it's like he's creating a new language to describe this unified reality.
Yes.
But why being? What's so special about that word?
He chose being because it's self-contained, self-describing. It's
Exactly.
neither a noun nor a verb, but something in between. It just is.
I like that. It strips away all the baggage that comes with other words, and it gets to the essence of existence.
Exactly. And Greenwood emphasizes that being is all-encompassing.
Okay.
It's common to everything without exclusion.
So it's not some distant cosmic concept. It's literally everything around us, within us.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty powerful when you think about it.
It is. And by recognizing this unity, Greenwood believes we can move beyond the limitations of dualistic thinking
Yeah,
and start to see the world in a whole new light.
definitely giving me a lot to think about. So where does Greenwood take us from here?
Well, next,
Yeah.
infinity, eternity, infinitude.
Oh,
He argues that because being encompasses everything, right, without exception, it can't be limited in any way. No boundaries, no beginning, no end.
so it's not just that the universe is infinitely vast,
Right.
but that being itself is infinite in every sense of the word.
Exactly. And Greenwood points out that even our attempts to conceptualize infinity inevitably fall short because we're trapped in finite thinking,
Right.
We try to imagine something going on forever, but our minds can't really grasp that fully. He argues that because being is not limited by time, it exists outside of our linear understanding of past, present, and future. It always has been and it always will be.
Okay, so I think I'm starting to get it. But if being is, infinite and eternal, what does that make everything else? I mean, the universe, our lives, everything we experience seems pretty finite to me.
Right, and that's where Greenwood introduces the concept of finitude.
Okay.
He explains that finitude arises within being as a kind of temporary expression.
Okay.
Think of it like waves on the ocean,
Okay.
The waves are distinct forms, but they're ultimately inseparable from the vastness of the ocean itself.
So our individual lives, the planets, even galaxies, they're all kind of like those waves.
Exactly.
Temporary expressions of this infinite and eternal being.
Mm-hmm. Greenwood believes that recognizing this relationship between finitude and being can profoundly shift our perspective. It allows us to appreciate the interconnectedness of all things while also acknowledging the unique and precious nature of our individual experiences.
Yeah, it's like even though our lives are finite, we're still part of something much grander, much more enduring.
Right.
It really gives a whole new meaning to that phrase, we are all connected.
Exactly. And Greenwood believes that embracing this understanding can lead to a more compassionate and harmonious way of living,
Right.
If we recognize that we're all expressions of the same underlying being, it becomes harder to see ourselves as separate and isolated individuals.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's like realizing that the divisions we often create between, ourselves and others are really just illusions.
And Greenwood doesn't stop there. He goes on to explore the implications of being for our understanding of consciousness, the meaning of life, even the nature of reality itself.
Wow, it sounds like this book is just like layer upon layer of profound insights.
It is, it is.
So, unfortunately, we are running out of time, though.
Oh.
But what are your final takeaways from our deep dive into believing unity?
For me, the most impactful idea was that shift from like a dualistic to a unified view of reality.
Yeah,
Greenwood's concept of being really challenges us to see beyond, the artificial separations we create
right.
and to embrace the interconnectedness of all things.
Yeah.
It's a perspective that I think can lead to greater compassion, greater understanding, and even like a sense of wonder about our place in the universe.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's funny. I think it's done more than just give me something to think about. It's actually given me a sense of peace. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Knowing that even though my individual existence is finite, I'm still part of something much bigger than myself, something infinite, something eternal. It's kind of awe-inspiring, really.
It is. And that sense of awe is what Greenwood encourages us to cultivate. He believes that by contemplating the nature of being, we can access a deeper level of understanding, a deeper connection to the universe and to ourselves.
Well, I think this deep dive has definitely sparked that sense of awe in me. And I hope it's done the same for you listening at home. If Greenwood's ideas have resonated with you, I really encourage you to check out Believing Unity for yourself. There's so much more to explore.
Absolutely. And remember, even if you don't agree with everything Greenwood proposes, the very act of contemplating these big questions can be incredibly enriching. It can help us to question our own assumptions, expand our perspectives, and maybe even discover a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in our lives.
That's a great point. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into being. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring.